Hiking poles are like eyeglasses. They're inconvenient, awkward, and expensive, but they allow me to drive safely. Similarly, poles are inconvenient, awkward, and expensive, but they allow me to hike safely. And that's a compromise I am willing to make. In my Tips for Older Hikers video, I said there were plenty of videos on YouTube that taught you how to use hiking poles. But after I said that, I figured I better take a look. And what I saw was not that impressive. First thing, people call these trekking poles. When's the last time you went on a trek? I'm on a hike today and I call these hiking poles. Second thing, there's some odd things they say, like use your poles back at a 45-degree angle. That might make sense if you're skiing and powering ahead and you don't want to catch a pole and break your arm. But for hiking, I always go ahead. I use hiking poles for three real reasons. The one primary reason is for balance, to stop from falling. The second is for weight transfer. I'm a horrible downhill hiker, and they give me great assistance on the downhill. And the third is for a little bit of security. I'm a little bit nervous where the trail drops off and you could fall, and these give me security to make it through those places. Poles give me a sense of security when there are large drop-offs on the trail. They make me more confident that I won't trip and won't fall, and help me to keep on hiking. Poles also come in handy in slippery situations. Poles are useful for balance and for stream crossing. For me, when the going gets rough, the poles get useful. There are all sorts of other reasons you can use hiking poles. You can see how deep a puddle is. You can use it for a tent pole. You can use it for a splint for your leg. And I assume you could put a handkerchief on it and wait for help. But I don't really think you need a video to tell you that. Hiking poles are like four legs on a dog. And when's the last time you've seen a dog plant his face on the trail? I see hikers do that all of the time. Most of the time on flat ground, I don't put weight on these poles. I just put them ahead of me like an insect's feelers. They're there in case I need help to stop me from falling. And just about 15 minutes ago, they did just that. They stopped me from falling. When I do a downhill, a big step off, I'll usually do a double pole plant, put the weight on them, and then come down. Two pole plant, weight on the poles, step down. Two pole plant, weight on the poles, step down. Then back to a normal cadence, 3 points on the ground. On an uphill, I use a combination of a normal walking cadence and a two pole plant if I need to pull some weight up. Poles aren't essential for me on the uphill hike, but they can be very helpful. And always, uphill, downhill, or on the flat, they stop me from tripping and falling. The straps are actually very important. You use your straps by coming in the bottom and coming through. And when I step down, at least half of the weight that I put on the poles is handled by those straps. When I'm walking in a straight line and loose, they're just loose in my hands, and the straps keep them balanced and don't require me to grasp the poles all of the time. But one thing I do recommend for the older hiker are these fingerless gloves. These are weightlifting gloves. I use them so that the straps on the poles don't abrade the skin on my hands, which with age has thinned a bit. Poles aren't so essential to me on a smooth, flat area, so occasionally I'll do a two-pole plant just for variety. Occasionally I'll pick up my poles and do a little jog. I really need them on the downhill. That's where they're essential to me. Even though I'm a senior hiker on a nice smooth section of trail, I'll even lift the poles up and do a bit of a jog. One of the things I find useful about the poles is a long handle that lets me vary where I place my hand along the pole. I use one setting for downhill and flats, and I shift my hands over the handle for the various needs of the terrain. I'm going to head uphill now. I go downhill at 120 centimeters. I go uphill at about 110, a difference of about 4 inches, and that works for me. Adjustment is easy. You toggle that out, go to the height you want, snap it in, repeat on the other section. Dropping to 110, my preferred length for the uphill. There is no one way to use poles. Some people ignore the straps altogether. Some people put their hands over the tops of the poles. Some people like to go low on the poles. You got to get out there and do it. Also, you don't get into poles naturally. I was walking for decades, and my brain had calculated everything and worked it all out. And suddenly I added 2 more points for my brain to process, and it wasn't a fast accommodation of the changes I was making. I'd say it took me about 5 hikes to work into using poles. And it's probably taken me 5 years till I made the decision to be a full-time pole hiker. But they work for me, and they keep me hiking. I've never seen a carbon fiber pole damaged or broken on this trail, but I have seen bent aluminum poles, and therefore I would prefer carbon fiber. All of the accoutrements, the little feet that go on here, the baskets, I do see those broken on the side of the trail all of the time. For a dry weather hike like I do at Grand Canyon, those things are worthless to me. I just expose the tips, leave the baskets home, and head out hiking. If you hike in mud or snow, your conditions might be different, but for these conditions, the plain poles work the best. These poles are brand new, first hike today, but they're my spare pair. My old pole, I found out, had a broken tip before I started this hike. Let me comment parenthetically about the reliability of YouTube videos. There are no qualifications to do a YouTube video. There's no review of the videos. You can say whatever you want to say. And some of these videos, especially when I look at the hiking pole videos, seem to be just repeating what they've viewed on other people's videos without any personal experience. When you see somebody in their 20s with a few clean hiking poles laying on a kitchen table, they may not be the best source of information. I have no particular qualifications to speak about poles, except that I use them, and I've probably walked a distance from New York to Los Angeles with using poles. But other than that, I have no specific qualifications. This is just a general guideline and completely unimportant if you have not yet purchased hiking poles. You generally want a pole to fit midway in your hand if your arm is parallel to the ground. For me, that's about 44 inches or 112 centimeters. When you do this measurement, you should be sure to wear the shoes you're going to wear hiking, as some of the maximal cushion shoes might add an inch or 2 to your height. Some poles are a little bit short, perhaps 135 centimeters long, and they may not fit your needs if you are tall. If you already have poles, just take them out and see if they fit you. In truth, I never did measure my 90-degree arm to the floor. I just started using the hiking poles and setting them as feels comfortable. For me, that's 120 centimeters for flat travel or going downhill, about a 47-inch setting. Poles are made of 2 primary materials. There are aluminum poles like this one, which are light, effective, and less expensive. Generally they cost as little as less than $20, up to whatever you care to pay. I purchased these for some overseas guests who were coming and making one hike. I wanted them to be able to have the poles, but did not need the most reliable pole, and I went with an inexpensive pole. The only poles that I've ever seen damaged on the trail are aluminum poles. Often they'll catch between 2 rocks, you will yank on it, and aluminum poles will bend. The pole I use is a carbon fiber pole. These are Cascade Mountain Tech, which I purchased at Costco. The first pair I purchased cost about $22. The most recent pairs I purchased cost $32. So they're not highly expensive, and I like them actually quite a bit. The poles are typically collapsible in either 2 or 3 sections, leading to a varied length to which they break down. This is a 4-section pole, which will break to a much smaller size and is easier to carry in your backpack. Poles come with lots of accessories, snow baskets, and tips. I generally take these off as soon as I buy them, and I never use them again. These tips, however, could be useful for transportation if you don't want to poke holes in your backpack or your car interior or your friends with the carbide tips of your hiking poles. If you elect to carry your poles, there are 2 or 3 primary methods. One is to put them through the bottom of the bag, for example, where your sleeping bag may have gone. This can be quite awkward, and they also leave sharp tips protruding, which might endanger hikers passing in a tight space. This Camelback Franconia pack has a very clever solution. It has 2 loops that allow you to put the poles through without exposing the tips to your fellow hikers. It then has a clever strap with a loop that allows you to hold them in place. This appears on both sides of the pack. If 2 hikers are sharing one pack, you can carry 2 sets of hiking poles in this manner. Finally, there are 4-section poles that break down into a much smaller size that you can just drop in your pack in any location. I started out using poles only for downhill hikes. I've ended up using them downhill, flats, and uphills for the added security I get to stop from falling. The durability I get is typically 750 to 1,000 miles a set. I, in fact, on this hike just started a brand new set of the Costco Poles. I like the Costco Poles because they are easy to return. I keep the Costco packaging and receipts, and when the tips wear out, which they always do, I return them, get my money back, and buy another set. This is an experiment. We're going to find out if these Costco tips are removable. They do not appear to be removable, and these are going back to Costco using their satisfaction guaranteed policy. I usually buy 2 sets of poles at one time because they are only available seasonally at Costco, and I might have a pair wear out and not have a replacement quickly available. It's a good thing I did it on this trip because as I examined the poles, I found out I had lost the carbide tip on one of the poles I was using, and on this trip I used a brand new set of poles. Costco is very convenient with that easy return policy. With regard to weight, these are about 8 ounces each. I suppose you could spend more money and buy a slightly lighter pole, but hey, I'm about 10 pounds overweight. If I lost 2 pounds, it would make the weight of these poles negligible. The second thing is maintenance. When I first got hiking poles, I used to wash them after every hike. I used graphite lubricant, which could get a little bit messy at times. But when I figured they only last me about 750 to 1,000 miles, and that I get fast and easy returns at Costco, I stopped doing maintenance on them, and that works out just fine. The poles last longer than the tips, and as we've discovered, these Costco tips are not easily replaceable. So when the tips break, they go back to Costco. And when they break, they tend to break just about at the same point in time. In conclusion, one of the things that I enjoy about making these videos is it helps me to learn more about myself and my conduct. I enjoy the analytical process involved in making these. These poles saved me 4 times on this hike. I counted from ankle twists and falls. Whether those 4 times would have led to permanent injury, I don't know. but I would prefer not to have the fall and not to have the risk, especially when you're deep into the canyon. In the end, I developed this analogy. Hiking poles are like eyeglasses. They're inconvenient, awkward, and expensive, but they allow me to drive safely. Similarly, poles are inconvenient, awkward, and expensive, but they allow me to hike safely. And that's a compromise I am willing to make. I hope this information is useful to you. I wish you happy hiking, and thank you for watching this video.